The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz is one of those books that takes ideas that sound almost ridiculously simple, and then the longer you live, the more you realize how difficult they actually are to practice. The Four Agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Simple enough. It's been a while since I've read the book, and I think I've read it twice. And as I revisit these agreements through the lens of my current life, I realized how much suffering I've experienced from doing almost the exact opposite. Believing words that wounded me, taking other people's choices as evidence of my worth, making assumptions about what was permanent, and judging myself for not knowing better at the time. And I'm still learning. This isn't a video from someone who has mastered them by any means. In my opinion, it's one book that I believe all of humanity could benefit from. So let's start with the first one. Be impeccable with your word. Despite what the sticks and stones phrase says, words have affected me pretty deeply. Again, one of the most quoted scriptures is life and death is in the power of the tongue. Even by spiritual people who know that we cast spells every time we open our mouth that either benefit us or slowly discourage. I've heard the words, "what's wrong with you?" in different forms for most of my life. And when you hear something enough, especially when you're young, you don't necessarily question the premise. You start searching for the answer. What is wrong with me? And you can spend years trying to fix something that perhaps was never fundamentally broken in the first place. On another note, a previous partner often said to me that I've never completely forgotten, everyone loves Mavery. It's funny how one sentence can become a tiny lantern that you carry around for years. Sometimes when my perception of myself gets particularly dark, I remember that someone once saw me that way. And being impeccable with your word also makes me think about the words we give other people. I've experienced the consequences of being told something was forever when it seems that there may have actually never been a real intention of building a future with me. And I'm sorry I'll never shut up about this. Like, it's the most prime example that I have. I have to even laugh about it because I must forgive being caught up in a moment like that, but I will never forget those words for as long as I live. They still echo throughout my life. Anyways, we don't always realize the words that we plant inside another human being. We might forget something that we said on a random Tuesday, but someone else might still be living inside it. So I'm learning to become more careful with the words that I speak and the words that I allow to become truths for me. Which brings me to the second agreement. Don't take anything personally. This one has been incredibly difficult for me. When relationships have changed, when someone pulls away, when I've felt rejected or forgotten, I haven't just simply experienced, this relationship didn't work out. I've experienced, there must be something wrong with me. I wasn't enough. I ruined it. Someone else was more lovable, more beautiful. And suddenly an event becomes an identity. And that's what taking something personally can do. And I want to be careful here because I don't think don't take anything personally ever means pretending that people can't hurt us. People's choices can change your life, but somebody else's inability or unwillingness to honor you the way that you hoped doesn't automatically contain objective information about your worth. Even though this is something I need to remind myself of daily. Something can break my heart without being proof that I'm defective. Which brings me to the agreement that life has been teaching me most aggressively: don't make assumptions. We make assumptions constantly. We assume the roof isn't going to cave in while we're sleeping. We assume the brakes will work when we get into our car. We assume the person we wake up to today will still want to wake up next to us tomorrow. Even marriage involves some degree of assumption. Yet a contract can't 100% guarantee another person's internal world. And one of the biggest assumptions I've ever made was believing that a connection I had with someone was special enough to withstand the tests of time. I assumed we would always be best friends in some form, no matter what. And I learned painfully many times, over and over again, what people are capable of forgetting. But I don't want the lesson from that to be never trust anyone again, because I know how tempting that is. When someone you believed was safe suddenly isn't, closing your heart can start to feel like wisdom. If I expect people to leave, they can't surprise me. If I don't believe anyone's promises ever again, I can't be fooled by them. If I never let myself need anyone, nobody gets the power to hurt me that deeply again. But there's a cost to living this way. The walls that keep disappointment out also don't let love fully in. So I fight to stay curious. Curious about people, curious about what I don't know, curious about whether someone new might surprise me in a completely different direction, and to recognize moments when we can actually check our assumptions and ask vulnerable questions. Moving on to always do your best. I used to hear always do your best as pressure, try harder, be more disciplined, produce more, fix yourself. But there's an important distinction that our best changes. Your best when you're rested isn't your best when you're exhausted. Your best when your heart feels safe isn't necessarily your best when you're grieving. And I've spent so much of my life looking backwards and prosecuting previous versions of myself with information they didn't have yet. Why didn't you know better? Why didn't you leave? Why didn't you try harder? Why did you believe that? But she didn't know. She was doing the best that she could with the consciousness, wounds, resources, and information she had at that moment. And that's where these agreements unexpectedly come together. Sometimes being impeccable with my word means stop speaking to myself like an enemy. Maybe not taking things personally means I stop turning every rejection into a referendum on my worth. Maybe not making assumptions means I stop pretending I know what other people are thinking or what the rest of my life is going to look like based on this particular chapter. And maybe doing my best means allowing today's best to be enough without comparing it to someone else's capacity, especially with chronic health issues that I've been dealing with. I haven't mastered any of these, and I think what I'm beginning to understand about the four agreements is that they aren't really a formula for making sure nothing painful ever happens to you. People may still disappoint you. Relationships may change. You might believe something that turns out to not be true. You might say something you regret. You might take something personally, make an assumption, or realize that your best today looks nothing like the best that you were capable of a few years ago. Maybe the point isn't to become so wise that life can never catch you off guard again. Maybe it's to become a little more conscious of what we do with it when it does. What words am I choosing to carry forward? What am I making someone else's behavior mean about me? What do I actually know? What have I filled in? And am I willing to believe that what I could give at the time really was my best? I invite you to leave a little more room between what happens to us and the story we tell about what it means. Because sometimes that tiny space is where an entirely different story can begin. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. All of you is welcome.